and welcome to the channel. My name is Sky and this silver floof ball is Cindy, my guide dog, and today we're doing a tag video about blindness. Yes, I am wearing a Christmas hat because it is the festive season. I hope everyone is having a very nice holiday season. I know that 2020 has been a bit crazy. I haven't been able to upload quite as much as I would like. That's because I have been in my senior year of university. I'll touch on that in a later video, but just know that I'm finished my semester. I just did my last final yesterday and I'm ready to start posting some videos on this holiday break. So the tag I'm doing today is called Do All Blind People Think the Same? I was tagged by my friend Joy and I'm really happy to be doing a tag video again. I'll tag 3 people at the end of this video, so look forward to that and look in the description for Joy's channel and the people I tagged. So without further ado, let's get on to the tag questions. Number 1, being blind has enhanced my other senses. This is a big misconception, as a lot of people who are blind will say, and I have to agree and disagree. As a lot of you know, blindness does not actually enhance senses as much as it makes a person rely on them more than a person who is sighted. Because sight is our brain's primary sense for taking in information in the world, we often forget or use other senses to less of their full abilities. When you're dealing with blindness, you start relying on the other senses to be able to properly interact with your world. I'm used to being able to distinguish objects completely by touch and not sight. I'm used to crossing the street completely by sound and not sight. There's also the fact that I was born legally blind, so I've always had to rely on other senses. I will say that since I've been through some blindness training, especially things like O&M, I have noticed that I do use my other senses more, which means they're developed more, but because I was blind from birth, I've always really relied on other senses heavily in general. Technically, yes, I do use other senses more than the normal person, which means they're more developed, which means, yeah, I guess they're better. Question 2. I prefer to date other blind people. I would have to disagree with this. I haven't done a lot of dating in my life, but from the dating I have done, it's always been with guys who are sighted. And there's no particular reason for that. It's just that if someone has asked me out, they just happen to be sighted. And that's fine for me. I don't mind either way. I don't actually know a lot of blind guys around my age, so there's not really anyone to date. I'd be totally open to dating someone who's blind. A big issue with a lot of people with having couples who are both blind is that it's hard to get around, transportation's a little difficult, but that would be the same if I wasn't married to if I was married. So I mean, things like Lyft and Uber and ride shares are coming out, which is making this a lot easier. So in general, I mean, I don't mind. I date someone who's blind just as easily as I date someone who's sighted. That brings us to question 3, which is I am less shallow about romantic partners. Again, I haven't done a lot of dating, but honestly, I'd say I'm a little judgmental. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, but I am really picky about who I date. That's just the way I am. If I date someone, I'm serious about it, and so I won't date someone if I don't get along with them or I know it's not gonna work out. I don't think that has to do with my blindness though. I mean, there's definitely like a type of person that I find attractive, but it doesn't really have to do with sight because I obviously like can't see people that well. But in general, like I don't go off of looks, I go off of personality. So if we're talking like that, then yes, I guess I am less shallow, and I don't really know if that has to do with my personality or my blindness in particular. Number 4, unsolicited help makes things harder. I'm not really sure what this question completely means by unsolicited help, because if someone offers unsolicited help, that's perfectly fine, and I can list many examples in my life where I've actually appreciated unsolicited help. When it comes to unsolicited help that people are forceful about, then obviously not. That's awful. There have been instances where I am trying to find something or get somewhere, and especially when I was newer to being more independent and I wasn't really great at blindness skills, and I'd be really stubborn and like go into a grocery store and try to find something, and you know, someone would see the girl with their cane looking lost and ask me if I needed help, and I really appreciated that because I was too stubborn back then to ask for help. So there are those aspects. I honestly don't ever mind if someone asks me for help. Even if I'm waiting at a street corner and someone like drives by and like yells out of their car window, "Do you need help?" Like, I'm completely fine saying, "No, thank you, thanks for asking," which happens more than you would expect. But there are times also when I'm at the intersection and there's no parallel cars coming and there's a pedestrian next to me and they offer me help to cross the street, and I appreciate it. Yeah, I could wait for 1 or 2 lights until I have a traffic surge and cross with that, or I could just take the unsolicited help. So obviously everyone who's blind is going to have those moments where someone grabs them by the arm and starts pulling them places, or else is really pushy, or else ignores them when they say no to help. That's obviously going to be awful, but in general, unsolicited help is okay as long as someone respects me if I say no. Number 5. The city I live in is easily accessible for me. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and here in the city there are a few factors to take into account. One big one is actually heat, which I'll say before public transit. That's because in the summer months, when it is about 110 to 120, it's not safe to walk outside in the daytime, which makes it extraordinarily difficult to get around while you're blind. Yes, you can do ride shares or paratransit, but even taking the public bus and waiting at public bus stops can overheat you or your guide dog, which is not safe and not healthy. And like, I'm serious, you can easily get heat stroke by just standing outside for 5 minutes, especially the dogs, because we put little booties on them to protect their paws from the pavement, because the pavement gets so hot that it will literally burn the dog's paw pads to the point where they can't walk, like really, really bad. So the heat makes the city very inaccessible in the summer. That's one of the reasons why I like to do a lot of indoor routes if I can during the summer times. It's also one of the reasons why I like to travel during the summer. It's just really, really uncomfortable and really dangerous, so that is an aspect. And then of course you can't talk about a city without talking about its public transit. Nevada is okay with public transit, at least in Las Vegas. It's a large city, we have over 2 million people, and a lot of people here are tourists. And because of that, we have an amazing rideshare system. I can request a Lyft or an Uber and get it in about 3 minutes wherever I am in the city, which is great. Of course, Lyft and Uber are a little expensive, but if I need to go somewhere fast and don't know the bus route, or it's kind of an emergency situation, or I'm running late, or whatever the case may be, Lyft and Uber are fantastic here. We don't really have trains. There's one monorail thing that runs from our convention center onto the Strip. It's not for locals, it is for tourists. It is very expensive. It doesn't really take you anywhere except the convention center, so if you have to go somewhere else, it's not very practical. It doesn't go to the airport, it doesn't go to the university, so honestly, that's not really relevant. In general, the Las Vegas Strip is very walkable, so that's really nice. Even in the summer, a lot of the casino properties will connect together inside, so you never have to go outside and into that heat, which is obviously purposefully designed because a lot of tourists come here in the summer and you can't have them melting in the Las Vegas summers. However, most locals, and I know this is crazy for some people to hear, but most locals do not visit the Las Vegas Strip often unless they work there. In terms of the rest of the city, it's pretty large and spread out. We have 3 big metropolitan areas, and they're kind of interconnected through bus routes. I will give Vegas this. The buses here are actually pretty decent, and what I mean by that is places that are highly trafficked have really decent bus service. For example, getting to my university, there are buses that run on each cross street every 15 minutes. In rush hour, or when it's really busy, it's every 10 minutes. So in general, for well-traveled area, the buses are actually pretty good here. Most buses will run 24/7, even though in the wee hours of the morning, it might be every hour or every 2 hours. It's not really safe to do that. You don't want to travel around here after, I'd say, 10 at night. It's just not safe. Of course, like many cities, the problem arises when you're not in those well-trafficked, well-traveled downtown areas. That's when you're going to have less bus service. Buses are going to come less frequently or not at all. With a lot of the outskirt areas, a lot of suburbs, there isn't actually any bus service, especially with the new developments. If you want to live here and you're blind, you really have to live in a place where it's already developed and well established and closer to the downtown area so that you can easily catch buses frequently and effectively. That being said, I will add very quickly that Las Vegas is one of the tourism centers of the world, which means that we have really great accessibility when it comes to things like rooms and travel. So if you come here as a visitor, you are going to have really good customer service, which is awesome. The hotels, in terms of like ramps and accessibility in that way, are fantastic. In terms of actually getting around to someone who's blind, they're absolutely horrible. That's because they're designed for people to get stuck in the rooms. They're not designed for people to be able to find their way out of these large casinos purposefully so that they stay there and spend more money and all that good stuff. So you have to know what you're doing and how to get out of the casinos, and it's not easy as a blind person. If you are blind and you've been to the Las Vegas Strip, you'll know what I'm talking about. It is really, really hard to get around, but in terms of customer service, very accessible. Number 6, I'm offended when the word blind is used as one of my descriptive characteristics. This is a huge pet peeve of mine, a ginormous pet peeve. And no, not that the word blind is used. My pet peeve is the fact that some people don't like the word blind being used. And I know that everyone is different, and I understand that, but for me personally, when someone's afraid to say a term like blind, they're gonna be walking around eggshells on me. And I hate that we live in a society where this kind of mindset or mentality is so widespread. When I am talking with people, they are so afraid that they're going to say the wrong thing. Like, this amount of political correctness has gone too far and made people even more afraid to talk to me, and I hate that. I hate it so much. Look, I'm legally blind. I'm completely comfortable with that. That's just a part of who I am. I've been that way since I was born. That's great. But when people are afraid to acknowledge who I am and say blind as a descriptor, it makes the stereotype of blindness worse, in my opinion. And I really can't stand that. I've met so many people who are just scared to talk to me, and it's heartbreaking. And a lot of it is because society is so bent on making this narrative of treat everyone equally. The reality is I'm blind. I'm comfortable saying I'm blind. There's nothing wrong with someone saying I'm blind, and I'm honestly going to be more offended if you're afraid to talk to me or afraid to say words like look, see, or blind because I am blind than if you're just comfortable around me. In fact, my best friends will make blind jokes all the time, and I'll make blind jokes right back. Or I'll make sighted jokes. I call them sightlings. And that's fine. Like, we're comfortable around each other, and that's so much better than being afraid to use the term blind. So I hate this mentality of having to treat everyone like so carefully that you can't even talk to them properly. So yeah, using the word blind is great. Number 8, I have experienced discrimination. Yes, I think that most blind people have, but in my case, it's never been that bad. Mostly it has to do with my guide dog, or it has to do with school. So when I was younger, I definitely couldn't stick up for myself as much because I was a little kid, and I had this teacher that was just a big jerk face, like really mean. And she would take my desk and she would push it all the way up to the very front of the class in front of everyone and push it so it was sitting against the wall where the board was. And she said, write down what's on the board. And I'd tell her I couldn't see it and she wouldn't believe me. And so I would like write down like squiggles. So I don't know why some teachers are like that. Most teachers are actually amazing people. But it only takes one bad one to give a kid a bad experience. So there were some field trips I wasn't allowed to go on, like skiing, because they just thought I couldn't do it. Gym class was an absolute nightmare. I had enough remaining vision to run, even though I would run into things like signposts and cones, and I tripped a few times and really bloodied myself up. But yeah, I did run, and so what the teachers would normally do is either A, make me run around the school just in multiple laps while the kids were doing something else, or B, sit on the sidelines and lift weights. That was really lonely and isolating and awful, and I would rather have them found out ways to adapt a lot of the gym classes rather than just completely exclude me, so that wasn't fun. It isn't that bad in university, and I think that's because a lot of universities are working really hard on being inclusive, and I think that's great. I've had a little bit of issues with professors and my disability resource center and stuff like that, getting tests on time, getting my readings in an accessible format, like OCR is very difficult. Just things of that sort I find very challenging, so I do not find I have equal access in the classroom, but you know, you get past it, like you just work on it every day. I have had a few issues with my guide dog Cindy. One time in particular, recently we went to a Asian restaurant and asked for a table, and they made us wait for like half an hour, which is weird because they were accepting other people. And my family, who I was with, said that the manager came out and was like staring at us. He was specifically staring at Cindy, my guide dog, who was just laying down next to me in harness, behaving herself as she always does. Eventually they let us in, and they led us to a completely empty room in the very back and put us in the very corner table where no one else could see us. So like, even though, yes, they allowed us into the restaurant, you could tell there was just like an era of, we don't want you here, we don't want other customers to see you, which is really sad that that kind of thing still happens. I've had issues in other restaurants. I've never had a flat out refusal because, as I've said, here in Las Vegas, customer service is pretty high and most people know that that is illegal, but I have had people want me to tie Cindy to the table and leave her alone while I go and get food at like buffet style restaurants and things of that sort, which not cool, actually very illegal. So there's still some education that needs to go on in that department. Number 9, if I could regain my sight with a cure, I would want to. You know, I've thought about this and I've had changing opinions about it. Honestly, I'm the person I am today because of my vision loss, and I've actually had a lot of moments. I'm a Christian, by the way, which I don't mention super often on my channel, but every once in a while it's relevant to mention that. So every night I often pray and thank God for all the things that I feel blessed and lucky enough to have in my life. And recently I've been thanking Him for blindness, which sounds kind of silly, but I feel like I've been able to become a better person, have more integrity, help other people, learn more about myself and others, learn important lessons about life. Like, there's so many good things that blindness has brought to me that I think a lot of people would never be able to understand unless they were also blind. Part of that is I wouldn't take blindness back. I'm very comfortable where I am today. In terms of my future self and if I would accept having sight or not, I think, even though again I'm completely comfortable where I'm at, yeah, I would want to be sighted again. There's so many things about the sighted world that I'm just fascinated about that I'd really like to know about. There's careers that I've had to just acknowledge that I can't do that I would love to do because I don't have the vision for it, like being a veterinarian. There are things that I want to do, like drive a car, that I just won't be able to fully do as someone who is blind. So I am so fascinated by colors. I love to draw, and I can do it with using magnification software and specific tablets, and that's great. But if I could see color and be able to incorporate that into my art, or if I could see actual detail and be able to incorporate that into my art, I would be so happy. And so yeah, if I could get my vision back, I think I would. But again, I don't feel like I need it, and I'm very happy and actually feel blessed to have had my vision loss where I am right now. And I don't know if that's hypocritical or not, that's for you to decide, but that's my answer on that one. So that is the end of this video. I hope it was interesting or helpful. This is a tag video, so that means I get to tag 3 other people. The questions I answered will be down in my description, along with the channels that I have tagged and along with Joy's channel who tagged me. I am going to tag Albino Guide Dog, Unsightly Opinion, and Her Second Sight. Again, if I tagged you, you do not have to do this video. If it's not your thing, that's perfectly fine, but I thought it would be fun to reach out to some active channels that I know and see if they would find this tag fun. So with that, look forward to some recent guide dog videos. I definitely plan on touching on the ACAA changes, which is the Air Carrier Access Act changes for service dogs and emotional support dogs. That is coming out very soon. But until then, I hope you guys have a great Christmas break if you are a student, or just a really nice holiday if you are not, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.